Hey guys, and welcome to a battle between myself, in charge of the regal forces of the High Elves, up against Red Legion, representing the Extreme Meme team, and the Tomb Kings. We're going to be playing on Eschen here, which is quite an interesting map overall. We're going to hop in here and showcase this nice game for you. So this is going to be a bit of an example of how you can turn defense into attack and attack into defense, and how you can fit your army in to an unfavorable situation and try and kind of turn the tide on your enemy. So for our forces in Deep Reserve, we do have some Illyrian Reavers just dotted behind, trying to get some sneaky stabbings up on the enemy, as well as some more Illyrian Reavers over hidden in the trees. Now for my front line, I'm actually going to play this as it takes a little while to get going. For my front lines, we do have 4 units of the Silvering Guard, super solid High Elf infantry. They are one of the new units from the latest DLC, and they're fantastic up against the Tomb Kings. They can go toe to toe with most of their infantry, as well as some of the large constructs. Now in Deep Reserve and protecting our back lines, we do have double Lothran Sea Guards with shields, multi-purpose missile and spear infantry unit, very adaptable in most situations. In the centre pocket, and going to be some of our big damage dealers today, we do have double archers as well as the Talons of Tor Khalida, which of course imbue fire damage onto the enemy, give them that weakness to fire as well as doing fire themselves. And to complement this, we have indeed gone for a fire archmage up on top of her mighty Moondragon here. I'm a big fan of the Archmage, but I'll probably get into that when we break down the armies at the end of the game. We are going to be bringing the Burning Head, Flaming Sword of Ruin to give us flaming attacks, which of course we are going to be dropping on top of our archers in combination with the regiment round. We have a Fireball as well, Arcane Conduit, Book of Hearth, all that good stuff. We do have 1 Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower as well, just to try and counter you Shopty Great Bows and so forth, and double Rangers in the centre pocket, just to really grind through that chaff very quickly. These guys, dual sword wielding elves, and they can certainly pack a punch overall, especially for their cheap cost. So in the back lines, unfortunately, Red Legion did spot my sneaky Illyrian Reavers, and he's counter-charging with some Skeleton Spearmen, Nekakar Horsemen, as well as the Eyes of the Desert, this sneaky regiment of renowned snakes themselves, and they're going to be a big problem. They're anti-large, they can stalk, and they can be a big problem overall. Now for his front line, he's gone relatively cheap with Skeleton Spearmen and Skeleton Warriors, just at the Kepper Guard in the centre pocket, the regiment renowned Tomb Guard, to have a little bit kind of, tougher strength overall. And he's gone very expensive in his heavy single entity gun line, double Bone Giant with their huge great bows, coming with some fantastic range and really decent damage overall. Gonna have to be very careful with my mage to avoid those shots. He also has a Screaming Skull Catapult. He also has a nice little skirmish corps over here. He has double Skeleton Horseman archers who are protected by some Nekakar Horsemen. I always recommend rolling with a light cav or even heavy cav sometimes to protect your ranged units when you've put a lot of money into them. He also has Arc on the Black as well for his Lord, with all the usual spells and stuff you'd expect. Coming in with Spirit Leech, Sword of Arcan, all that good stuff. So what we're going to be doing here is a bit of a slow push. We have a relatively defensive army as far as it goes. We want to get our value from our archers and our Lothran Sea Guard, as well as the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower. So he's managed to get a few shots onto Arcan there and traded relatively effectively. He was only shooting into Silveren Guard, who of course do have silver shields. So we're going to play this game pretty damn slow. What we want to do here is just advance little bit by little bit, ensuring that his skirmish corps can't really get any value or any good targets at least, so we can try and get into range with as many archers as possible. So at the moment, if you look at both armies, you would consider the Tomb Kings to have the range advantage, coming in with the Double Bone Giant as well as the Screaming Skull Catapult. But that is only true for the time that we are actually at long range. As far as the mid-range game goes, we certainly going to pack heavy more kind of punches here, coming in with the triple archers, double Lothran Sea Guard, as well as boosting them up with the Flaming Sword of Ruin. We will easily out-trade my opponent. So I want to play the defensive game, but I need to get a little bit close beforehand. So we're simply going to see me slowly pushing forward here with the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower and forcing back these skirmishers every time they do come in. A couple of nice shots are coming in as my micro does lapse a little bit on top of these Illyrian Reavers. We are slowly going to start to advance up here, dodging a few of those catapult strikes and starting to get that damage on the Bone Giant, trying to force my opponent to leave his defensive shell here and come out into the nice open field. But he's not going to bite here. He's simply going to move up with all his skull catapults and so forth to really try and punish me and get some damage. As you can see, a very pesky player here, Red Legion, hunting down my poor Illyrian Reavers. So we've had enough of this, and we are going to start to advance a little bit. Now we've managed to get some pretty decent damage on top of the Bone Giant, and threaten his Screaming Skull catapult as well. I'm going to advance while he does reposition. A couple of my shots do come into my Archmage fire, as well as the catapult on top of the Talons of Tor Khalida here, which is certainly not good for us. So we're going to be pulling back with those guys as much as possible, dropping at 1 or 2 fireballs as well, trying to hunt down the ever-elusive Ark in the Black. We're taking a huge amount of damage, but this is the perfect time for us. So as you can see, we're taking a ton of damage on top of the Talons, so we really need to take out this pesky Screaming Skull catapult. We've got into range of all our archers here, doing some fantastic damage. Looks like we have accidentally switched targets briefly. I did try and pop a burning head down on the Kepa guard, but they managed to avoid for the most part. We're getting a tiny bit of damage on the Skeleton Spearman, but to be honest, our magic so far has been a little bit damp noodle. So we're simply going to be pulling back the Talons as well as another unit of archers to force off these skirmishers, getting some fantastic value straight out of the gate while we pin down this pesky catapult. And once this catapult's gone, we're certainly going to have the upper foot. I'm going to be able to play that defensive game we've wanted to play from the start. So we've taken a little bit of damage here, which of course isn't too nice, but now we've forced out these archers. These Skeleton Horseman archers with our own, and that the Equal Bolt Thrower is very low on ammunition. It's used up most of its shots trying to take down this Bone Giant. I'm happy to pretty much abandon it and start forcing my way forward. We've done huge damage to the Screaming Skull catapult, so it's no longer really a threat just with the one model left. So we are going to be pushing up with all of our archers now. Nice shots though, and constant pressure up on top of the Archmage, who's taking a huge amount of work here. Looks like his pesky Skeleton Horsemen are trying to get down on the flank. We did do a cheeky hit and run with the Illyrians, so we're going to charge back in before coming over with some Silver and Guard as well. So we do drop a nice fireball here, goes straight through the Bone Giant. Our magic has really been missing so far today. But we're going to be pushing up, and as you can see, the catapult is now completely gone. At this point, Red Legion really should be pushing up, and he is starting to do that now, but he should have been pushing up a little bit earlier, in my opinion, and pressuring my back line, because now the catapult's gone, he has nothing to stop my Archer Corps. We're going to be dropping a Flaming Sword of Ruin down, catching both the Talons as well as these archers, and this Bone Giant is just going to absolutely melt now. And because he didn't pressure early enough, I managed to focus down the catapult. I can now focus down the Giants without having to worry too much about the front line. In the distance, you can see our poor Eclaw catapult is getting shut down here. But again, he's pretty much out of ammunition, so I'm not too fussed at this point. We're going to get another lovely fireball aiming at this Giant, which once again does swing and miss. Now, this Bone Giant over in the distance here, down to 11 hit points, is going to be going down. And he does finally start to get into our back line, but he's simply going to run into a wall of Lothran Seaguard, who will be very happy to face these Skeleton Horseman archers. We got them turned around just about in time, but not quite braced. But again, this is a perfect engagement for us. A nice Skeleton Summon does come down, so he's trying to pressure the back line as much as possible. But the Archmage is simply going to float over here to, just scare these guys off a little bit. Just let them know we know they're there. So now we can simply focus down at this second Bone Giant. He doesn't have too many good targets apart from our Archmage up here, who's going to be launching another fireball, this time aimed at Ark and the Black. And of course, every time we do fire magic, that is going to be giving us a Kindle Flame as well, which is going to combine with these archers and the Talons. So now we've dealt with this giant over here, we're simply going to move our Archer Corps over onto the upper straights here and start focusing it down at this Bone Giant, who once again gets another fantastic shot in, but his health really starts to melt, especially when we imbue our warriors once again with the Flaming Sword of Ruin, also catching these rangers to do a bit of extra damage in the front line, and this Bone Giant just melts. Now, this is a really good tip for new players. If you have a single entity and a Bone Giant is trying to target it down, you simply fly over top of him, and he has to turn around and redo his attack animation all again. So we do float around him, do a big Dragon Breath down, and just before he shoots, we simply fly back over again, and he has to do that very slow animation the whole time. Our lovely Archer Corps is going to be bringing him down here. So the backline is relatively safe for us so far. Managed to beat back a lot of his mobile core here of the Skeleton Horseman archers. He has the Sneaky Snake, so to be honest, the only real threat that remains to us. There are some summons Ushopti, but of course they will be disappearing very quickly. And our backline is completely and utterly fine, and all of the pressure is off me and onto Red Legion. He has to get into the backline and shut me down. If he allows me to use up all this ammunition, there is simply no way he can win the game, which is basically what I want. So from that starting position, we were forced to attack. We managed to turn that that into a defensive formation. Sylvan Guard got in a combat here with double Nekakar Horsemen as well as some Skeleton Spearmen, and they'll happily fight that to their death. They're a little bit isolated here out on the flank. I'd rather have them a bit high and tighter to protect this back line, but it looks like Arkan is going to be sneaking into the back line, trying to shut down the Talons where possible, but he has to be a little bit careful with the Archmage still lurking and very healthy. We're simply going to be pulling back though for now. I want to avoid the Eyes of the Desert as much as possible. Him sniping at my caster is one of the only ways that he'll be able to get back into this. Rangers have done a fantastic job so far, up to 142 kills, clawing their way through these skeleton spearmen who are dying in their droves here, which is always glorious to see. Down on the low ground though, the Kepler Guard have been a real bulk war in that centre pocket from my opponent here. Kepler Guard up to 82 kills up against Sylvan Guard is very impressive, holding 2 of those units back. We are going to get a nice rear attack here, however. And the Eyes of the Desert constantly trying to dodge our missile fire where possible. They do come in with a 25% missile resistance, but as you can see, the Nekakar, Horseman Archers, are going down in the distance. There's nothing speedy left for my opponent as he did chuck in these Nekakar Horsemen, desperately trying to shut down the Archers, but got intercepted by Lothran Seaguard, and I still have a healthy back line here. Over up on the high ground, Sylvan Guard simply going to be finishing off Skeleton Spearmen. A little bit slowly though, these guys don't do the most damage, and we're going to be trying to focus down at the Eyes of the Desert where possible. They're not the perfect target due to their resistance, of course, to missile fire, but every little helps at this point. Just going to be making them waste their ammo on my kind of flimsy frontliners point with charging Archers and Lothran Seaguard in, and keeping our Archmage nice and happy in the distance. I was pulling back to escape Spirit Leeches and so forth, but as you can see, the Eyes of the Desert just don't really have a good home. Kepler Guard still doing fantastic in the centre pocket, but slowly being dragged down by sheer attrition. And now at this point we have the mobile advantage. I'm simply going to drag the Archmage over to this left-hand flank to help stomp down these Skeleton Spearmen and get me a very healthy unit of Sylvan Guard back into the main engagement here. There was a nice Skeleton Warrior Summon trying to bolster and help the Kepler Guard as much as possible, but they're only pulling down Archers who no longer have any ammunition, so it's not the end of the world for me overall. In the back line, we do have some Sylvan Guard that are rallying, and the Talons have been very good this game. Only 3 kills, but huge amount of damage, as well as their special ability. Of course, given the... oh, where is it? Here it is. Flammable, plus 22% weakness to fire, combined with that Flaming Sword, just does such nice damage, and it really helps you take down the large targets without having to bring expensive Sisters of Avalon. We're going to be shooting into Skeleton Spearmen at this point just to finish them off. We land over here and eat up those Skeleton Spearmen as predicted. My opponent desperately was trying to race over here with Arkan as well of the Eyes of the Desert, but now they're simply going to meet Sylvan Guard, who are a perfect matchup up against the large entities, which are the Stalkers here. We have more Lothran Seaguard rallying as well. The Kepler Guard still holding strong, 140 kills, very impressive. But the rest of his forces has started to disappear here and start to crumble. Sylvan Guard are going to be forcing their way up onto the Eyes of the Desert, who are trying to get in some desperate last shots. Looks like they're actually clipping more of the Archers than the Sylvan Guard here. But Sylvan Guard, they can tank this. Arkan does charge in, but we're going to get a nice fireball as well down onto the flanks of the Eyes of the Desert. Looks like they're going to be trying to dodge at the last second here, but bang! We finally hit a fireball, and down one of those Stalkers does go. Arkan's completely surrounded now by Sylvan Guard, really not where he wants to be. He will get dragged down very easily, and we can simply float away with our Archmage kind of cackling in the distance, surround the Kepler Guard and drag them down, and it looks like Army Losses is going to set in here, so very well played to Red Legion. Unfortunately, the Eyes of the Desert plus a very, very beat up Arkan here aren't going to be enough, I don't think. We're pushing up the hill now with our Rangers, Lothran Seaguard. We've just formed a death blob at this point. There's nothing fancy about this. As you can see, they're already starting to crumble a bit. Leader Mortis has been popped down, trying to buff their leadership where possible. But Arkan is running for the hills, which is never a good sign if you're a Team King player. Sylvan Guard is saying hello now to the Eyes of the Desert, as Arkan goes for a glorious last suicide charge here. But I believe the Archmage of Fire, up on top of her majestic dragon, flying high above the skies, is going to come in just for one last hello here. And bam, thumps in, and down goes those sneaky snakes. So a Pyrrhic victory, still a very close game, and a very fun one overall. So massive shout out to my opponent, Red Legion. And yeah, with some super good stuff overall. I just wanted to showcase how a build in this situation, which looks like it has a disadvantage off the bat, simply because I've gone for a lot of ranged tools, but I'm outranged by my opponent. They have catapults, bone giants, all these very nasty stuff, can be turned into an advantage simply by taking out that catapult. All of a sudden, I can play defensive, and of course, Legion has isn't planned to go attack in. Because he's brought so many of these ranged units, he wants to play defensive, but by taking out those key targets, he is forced to attack, and he simply doesn't have the troops or the build to break into my back line, allowing the archers to slowly rake up that damage. Not huge kills across the board for them, but they took out both the Bone Giants as well as the Catapult, getting some huge value, and then just doing that consistent damage. Well, the mixture of Silvern Guard and Rangers, I'm a big fan of this mix up against the Tomb Kings in general. Silvern Guard, as I said previously, can take down all of the cav, fantastic against the large entities, and do very good up against the infantry. Of course, the Kepler Guard can go toe-to-toe with them, but that's pretty much it. And the Rangers saturating on top can really chew for the chaff quite quickly, stopping them from breaking into the back lines. The Archmage is something that I've been experimenting with a ton recently. Now, Teclis, in my opinion, is much more powerful than an Archmage on a dragon, but I find Teclis a little bit boring myself. I think he's incredibly powerful, one of the best lords in the game at the moment, but I see him all the time, and I don't know, I get a bit of Teclis fatigue, I think. I've never liked him too much. So Archmage, a little bit more fun. You have that punch of the dragon as well as the movability. Can be a little bit risky, of course, going up against Tomb Kings. You saw us take huge amounts of damage off the gates there from all the Bone Giant fire, but again, I didn't really need to land, just do those breath attacks, constantly buff up my own troops, and come in for those key strikes. So super fun game overall, guys. Hope you did enjoy. If you did, please do consider giving the video a big old thumbs up and a subscribe. We do all kinds of Total War Warhammer content, from campaigns, we're doing an Imric one at the moment, which will be carry on, multiplayer battles, tournaments, King of the Hills, all that good stuff. And if you want to get involved in any of those, feel free to join my Discord. There's a link just down below, as well as a link to my Patreon account if you want to support the channel in any other way. Anyway, guys, until next time, peace, and as always, stay awesome.